This episode of Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. In particular, this month is being sponsored by Lindsay Marie Trebet and Nick Martin. I thank you both so very much. And if you want to become a patron, you can do so at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? A couple things I want to address real quick before we get into this show, which is going to be part one of two. We got through about half the stuff I wanted to talk to Sysco and Steve Stockton about, who are our guests tonight, from their new book, Sysco's book that Steve helped with, however you want to look at it. So they'll be back either next week or the week after for part two of this. But what I wanted to address are a couple of quick things. One, huge shout out to Eric Hervin. I hope I'm saying your last name right. I got to meet him this week. He's been a long-time listener. He's been on the show before, relaying some of his stories for a listener story segment. And really cool guy. And he brought me some tab. And that was very cool of you. And he also helped me out big time with something else. And so huge shout out to you, Eric. Thank you very much. And very cool meeting you. Two, YouTube seems to be playing games. A number of people have been complaining that there aren't any shows. However, this month, May, this is actually probably June when you're hearing this, but there were 9 shows total, I think, main shows for Where Did the Road Go? And people were like, there were only 2 shows this month. So YouTube is not telling people when stuff is coming out. They've changed their algorithms. Our numbers dropped significantly, and now I'm starting to see why, because they're not recommending us like they used to. So check back often if you're listening on YouTube. I don't know what else to say. It's kind of hurting us again. And I don't think it's intentional on YouTube's part, but people are not getting notified when new shows are up. And there are also, if you are a patron, there was quite a few shows this month for patrons or extra bits, and there was the long Jeff Ritzman show where we discussed what might be the common factors behind everything paranormal. That alone, I think, was probably worth being a patron if you listen to it. I hope it was. I was very happy with that. So, if you want to become a patron, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com, click on the Patreon link, and sign up. You'll get access to all the previous content as well as all the new content. And, of course, you can also check out the merch that's available at wheredidtheroadgo.com. So, with no further ado, here's my conversation with Steve and Sysco. So I'm happy to welcome back Steve Stockton and Sysco. How are you two doing?
Fantastic.
Doing great. Glad to be back.
So glad to be here.
It's been, a couple of years since you guys were on?
My goodness, yes.
Probably, yeah.
I don't actually remember when it was. It seemed like it seemed like a good combination at the time, and I think I barely had a talk the entire time.
Yeah, the last time I think we were on together, things broke down and you just let us keep talking, and then toward the end we're like, is he there? Did he go to sleep? What happened?
For an hour and a half, and we just realized you weren't there anymore.
I was still there. I was just listening. I didn't need to say anything. August 4th, 2016, that was posted.
Wow, that's been a
while. My goodness. There's so many things have happened since then. And again, we want to thank Seriah, because Steve and I wouldn't even know each other if it wasn't for Seriah. This was all his idea.
Yeah, I think you get called in like a listener story or something.
Yeah.
And Seriah messaged me. He's like, hey, there's this lady I think you'd like to meet. And we traded info and ended up, I don't know if you called me, Sysco, or if I called you, but we talked for like hours the first time. And just like old friends that hadn't seen each other in a long time getting caught up. And we've had several marathon phone sessions like that.
Gosh, yeah.
It would be one of those where I get a message like, can you talk for like 5 or 10 minutes? I'm like, yeah, sure. And like an hour and a half later, we're still talking.
Right.
And not repeating the same stuff either. I mean, it just clicked. It was supposed to be. Since then, your podcast inspired me to go ahead and, I said, why not? Let's just try this, and so now I'm doing a podcast, Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal podcast, because I said, I'm sitting here. It was the season right after my son was in a bad car accident, and I had to stay home and stop everything else and find a way to reach out to the world without really having to leave the house. So podcast seemed like a great idea. And basically it was because I really wanted to talk to some of these people. I wanted to talk to Mark Nesbitt about Gettysburg and paranormal crime scene investigation. That just blows my mind. And just all these different people. And I've asked Steve to come on multiple times as my co-host. So we just have a blast. And then we finally got the book out.
Now what's the name of the book?
It is We Are All Children in the Wilderness of the Afterlife, a guided tour through a haunted life.
Nice.
And
it's a great title.
Thank you. Thank you. Because, I know you get it, but it's like the last great the frontier. We kind of know what's going on in the ocean. We're kind of working on space, but that's the ultimate question. What happens on the other side,
Yeah.
What happens to us? And
every time we talk, Sysco would share these just wonderful, wonderful stories with me, and I'm like, "You got to write a book. You got to write a book." And I just kept after, and finally she's like, "Okay, I'm going to do it, but you're coming with me."
Yep.
So she did the heavy lifting, and I followed along behind her and did like
heavy lifting. I had to drag you the whole way.
Had to do like a little color commentary after each chapter. I'd never written like that. I'd never worked with a co-author before, but it turned out really good, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It was a very easy to read book, and it was something I didn't want to put down as I was reading it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good.
And I got to tell you, I never realized, Seriah, how hard it is to go back and relive that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because I just didn't realize it until we're doing it, and I'd call Steve and I'm like boo-hooing and stuff because I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember what that felt like and what it sounded like, especially the farmhouse. Because the farmhouse just kept on giving because I was so little and everything that happened with losing, one night I had, 9 people at the dinner table and the next day I was an only child. That's kind of the way it was without explanation.
Well, let's get into that because I know you didn't talk about that the first time you were on. Talk about your earliest paranormal memories.
Well, that was not my earliest paranormal memory, but I tried to kind of explain in the book that I'm going to start with the one that I don't really have to reach for. I have plenty that were spotty, and I didn't want to add anything to the story that meant so much to me to tell it exactly like it was. Don't fill in the blanks. If there's a blank, say there is.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be really real, and that one, I'm going to say I was around 2.5, 3, and we were in this farmhouse, and I had multiple sisters. Now, we were like the Brady Bunch. He had so many, and she had so many, and they all got married, and they had me. So I linked everybody. All my sisters and brothers were much older than I was. I think the youngest was 14, 15 when I was born, and everybody was older than her. So they were all in high school, and I was there. So I had a lot of babysitters, let's say. And I remember this farmhouse was amazing. I know that it was up and running as a full working farmhouse during the Revolutionary War. Now, this is in New Jersey, and it was in Jackson, which still has farmland. So I can imagine what it looked like during Revolutionary War. And if for listeners who don't know, so many skirmishes and battles happened here. I mean, George Washington was all up and through here. You had Battle of Monmouth. You had Molly Pitcher, the whole shebang. A lot of things happened here. So I'm young, and I think my mom was at work maybe. One of my sisters laid me down. I cannot remember 100%. I just remember waking up in the middle of my mother and father's king-size bed. And it was a huge bed because my dad was like 6'7". So even though I was little, how when you're little, you think everything's bigger.
Right.
Yes, but it really was huge. And I remember there was a chenille bedspread. And I'm telling this for a reason because I just remember the pock marks waking up. If you were ever a kid and fell asleep on a bedspread that's got the bumps and you have it in your face. Yeah. You have it in your face and stuff when you wake up and you start rubbing it.
Chicken pox or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember hearing this like crackling And I don't remember exactly what I thought it was, but it just wouldn't go away. It was getting louder. It was like a crackly, sparkly sound, sparking kind of sound. It's hard to describe. And I thought it was coming from my mom's closet. She had this great big closet with these shuttered doors, and they had the, what do you call those, Steve? Shutters, but they've got the spaces in them, like the slats. That's it, slat.
Yeah.
Ah.
So I'm thinking somebody's in her closet messing around with the hangers or something, because my sisters would get in trouble. You're not supposed to borrow mom's clothes. And that was one of the things that was going on. And I thought, oh gosh, that's what it is. I'm sitting up and I'm rubbing my face. And all of a sudden I see this light come out from underneath the doors. And it's kind of growing up and pushing through the slats. The light's actually coming through the slats. And the crackling's getting louder, and then it just seemed to go into like a woo, woo. It was weird. It was like a pulsating sound. I have no idea what you call it. And this, I don't want to say mist, I don't want to say fog, but it was kind of in between the two, starts coming through with the light, and the center is darker. And as it seems to be coming towards me, and I'm sitting up in the bed looking straight at it, it starts to make a face. And it actually, like I said, it in the book, it takes longer to describe it than it actually did to happen. And all of a sudden there's this face, and he's got a ponytail, and his eyes were closed, and it seemed like his mouth like kind of fell open to scream, but no sound came out, and his eyes at the same time, and they had this red light. His eyes were not red, it was red light coming from his eyes. It got real big and coming straight at me, and I just fell backwards, trying to get away from it. What do you do? And it went right over me and right through the wall and disappeared.
Wow.
I just started screaming, and I'm screaming, little kids screaming, and I remember repeating over and over again, red eyes. Oh, the ponytail had this, it was tied with like a red ribbon, and the ribbon kind of fluttered as it went over me, and I saw this red ribbon. That's all the color I remember, his eyes and his ribbon. So I kept saying, red eyes, red ribbon, red eyes, red ribbon. And I'm screaming. All of a sudden, the door bursts open, and a couple of sisters and a mom came through. And there's a lot of scrambling. She had a nightmare. There's a lot of talking amongst themselves, and I'm getting picked up and carried out. And I'm crying, and I just keep repeating this, red eyes, red ribbon. And they're trying to calm me down. And I remember my mom saying something to one of my sisters, like take her into the kitchen, give her a snack, like an apple or a cookie, whatever, calm her down. And as I'm being taken away, I hear my older sister say to my mom, "Mom, red eyes, red ribbon, just like I saw." Bam, that clinched it to me. Because in that house, my father was a World War II vet, and he had a lot of PTSD. Of course, then we called it like shell shock.
Right.
And he tended to drink a lot. And when he drank, he got more angry and things like that. And he just was not having any kind of nonsense. You did not talk about this kind of stuff. There was no discussion around the table. Hey, yesterday, I saw the cow fly by the window or something. You didn't talk about it. You just kept it to yourself. And the fear was so thick with that, you didn't really even, if you talked amongst yourselves about anything odd, it was all in a whisper, like it was some big secret. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we didn't talk about that, and I did not find out till maybe 22 years later at a family reunion where people were actually talking about things that happened there. All these things matched up, and I got a lot of validation. So that's just crazy. Yeah.
And talk about who the ghost may have been.
Well, another incident was the night I heard all the screaming in the middle of the night, and that happened a lot in our house because my dad did get violent, and that many people in a house, things are going to happen, but he was usually the brunt of it. And everybody, it's funny, but it's not funny, that everybody had kind of a go-to weapon. Like, we'd all wind up in the hallway, and I'd be on somebody's hip, or they'd try to make me stay in my room, and I'd always, stumble on out there. And like one sister would have a golf club, and one would have a hairbrush, and would have a shoe. It's like crazy stuff like that, all in the hallway with these mishmash of PJs and curlers, and So it was kind of funny to look back at it, but it was pretty terrifying when it was happening. And this night, I remember being shocked because my dad was coming up the stairs to help, and he wasn't part of it. My sister is behind a locked door, and these are great big farmhouse doors with doors, big,
right.
Wooden doors, and had the little keyhole that you could look through, that old skeleton keyhole.
Mm-hmm.
And she's screaming, "There's a man in my room, there's a man in my room." Well, my dad tried to break the door down. There's lots of screaming and yelling, open the door, unlock the door, all this. And I remember one of the sisters picking me up, and now I'm on a hip and I can see better. And there's all this commotion. And all of a sudden, I guess my sister finally got up to unlock the door. And when it just pushed open with all the weight of everybody pushing and banging on it, I could see her jump back into the bed and like kind of cover up her head with the covers and point and say, "There's a man. He's right there. He's right there." Now, this is probably second or third floor. I cannot really remember where her room was, but I know it was one of the highest ones up. So she's pointing, and my dad and everybody goes in there first. And now I'm kind of getting flash looks. The night before, she had been getting ready to put me to bed, and she had just done a report, and that was a big deal back then because they all had to share a typewriter, and it was one of those push things, and the ribbon would pop up. It was a big deal. It took a long time to write these reports. And she had put her report for the next day up on this high dresser, and she was putting Noxema on her face, and she put a little on me, and then she did it real tight because I had a tendency to get into things. She put that Noxema jar, which is like a white cream, up on there on top of the report. And now when the door swings open, I see this report is all torn up and balled all over the place. Noxema is all across the mirror. It's all over her dresser.
Oh.
I didn't see a man. My dad's looking, everybody's running around the room looking under the bed, in the closet,
Mm-hmm.
And I look up and there's a handprint on the mirror. Now, my dad, being who he was, starts yelling at her and go, "What did you do? What kind of thing are you causing here?" And my brother is trying to go around and be kind of a detective and saying, "Dad, look, it's the handprint's bigger than mine. She couldn't have done it." Now they're trying to look out the window. They go get flashlights. They go outside. It had snowed. There's no footprints. There's no way anybody could have climbed up that trellis out her window. It was just an old rickety trellis, So lots of things like that went on. In that conversation, and later on in the reunion, I found out that she was seeing the same ghost I was seeing. He was what seemed to us to be a Revolutionary War hero, or war soldier. They're all heroes to me. War soldier uniform, and the ponytail with the red ribbon. Sometimes they saw him who's extremely anguished, like very, like beckoning almost, like "Help me."
Right.
And then other times he was extremely angry and throwing things and stuff like that. He was one of the main ghosts in there. I know there were more. And the barn, there was something horrible in the barn. Just really emanated a lot of evil. I mean, I hated to go anywhere near that barn. We had 2 barns on the property. One of them, it was just something very bad in there. And I never found out any more about that, but nobody liked to go in there. And so much so that my dad worked in the cellar rather than the barn. He did a lot of woodworking, and he'd rather be in the cellar than go in there. And I don't blame him. But it's, and now it's all possibility, and then there's another part where I found out later at the reunion that my mom wanted a pantry built in the kitchen. And I guess one day when my dad just had enough being, asked to do it, and did it angry, and my brother helped him. And when they knocked down the wall, my brother was handed all the stuff, "Here, take this garbage." And out then we burned stuff, so we had a bonfire going, throwing the wood and stuff on. And he's handing him all this stuff and just throw it on the fire. I found out that night 22 years ago that my dad found like a little room in there that they had like walled off. It had letters It had, other things. I'm not 100% all that was in there. My brother said other historical stuff. What does that mean?
Right.
And the stairway, it must have been a servant stairway that went from the kitchen. Like they'll have those little stairways to go up to the master bedroom.
Right.
I guess to bring food right up to the, or other things up there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little stairway, and the stairway ended right at the back of my sister's closet where she always saw the guy. So this just, what?
Mm-hmm.
And then he tells me the letters were tied with a red ribbon.
Yeah.
So, and I never told him the story. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just, what? Did y'all tell him? What's going on,
On another show we were on, I challenged the listeners to play that like what's the ghost that scratches your face? The Bloody Mary. To play that like a Bloody Mary game. Go in the bedroom, turn all the lights off, and say red ribbon, red eyes, red ribbon.
Okay.
And see if anything comes out and gets you. So, because somewhere there's a farmhouse in New Jersey where it might just work.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's a development now. And I found that out not too long ago, because I finally was able to get from them, what was the address? I want to go back and say, well, it's a development now. So now I'm thinking like Poltergeist when they built like the development on the cemetery with all the stuff. I've always felt so sorry for him, Seriah. I honestly, I think I said that in the book. I always just I wanted to help him. Mm-hmm. I never got, although, it was scary when he would pop up. I never got that kind of fear from him. I did from the barn. I did from other places in the house and on the property, but not from him. He just wanted help,
Mm-hmm,
and I wanted to help him. And I think I've been trying to help all along, because of that. And I know might sound silly, but, when that's put in you young like that, I can't help him. Let me help as many others as I possibly can,
Right. Yeah.
And hope, along the way, but somebody's getting haunted, or he went on or dissipated, or whatever they do, but isn't it crazy?
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. I wish, I always wanted to find a hidden room in my house.
And to burn it.
Yeah, like that's awful.
I found one once. My cousin Joanne and her husband Bill had inherited, I think it was his grandmother's house, and my parents were antique dealers, so we were helping them clean it out in exchange for some of the stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was outside, and I kept noticing, there's a window up there that doesn't match up to a room. And we kept fooling around, and finally we found in the back of a closet in one of the rooms downstairs, there was boards that didn't match. Those lifted out. And almost like Sysco mentioned, there's a little narrow stairway that went up there. There was a little tiny room where that window was. And Bill, my cousin's husband, thought about that, and he said, my grandmother had a sister that wasn't quite right in the head, and he thinks they probably locked her in that room, and she sat there, for years and looked out that window, because there was a time, when special needs people didn't get help. They weren't mainstream. Yeah, they locked them in the attic or in the basement or somewhere and just kind of forgot about them. So that was really creepy. But that's the only time I've ever found a hidden room that wasn't known about. The house that I lived in Vegas had a room behind a staircase in the basement, but I knew about that. But it was still pretty cool.
It's so creepy that you say that, Stephen. I've heard you tell that a couple times, and it always reminds me of up here we have, I know most of the people have probably heard about, Jersey Shore, and we've got Asbury Park. There's so much, that's going on here. Houdini's mom actually passed away in a little hotel over here, the Empress, that's right off the boardwalk in 1920 something. And, just a lot of different history has happened right here in Asbury Park. And I found out, I actually went on a walking tour with one of the ladies who owns a paranormal and curiosity shop out there. And it's amazing you can live so close for so long to something and not realize the deep history of it until you start digging. Well, in the Barclay, there, of course, it's extremely haunted, and many people have many stories about, being stuck on the elevator and things happening in different rooms. And I never knew Johnny Cash owned like half of that property at one time, and it was one of his favorite places to go. And he had a room there that overlooked the ocean, and multiple times to this day, people still see him standing out there looking out the window. But the thing that creeped me out the most is ever since I was a little kid, I used to love what are those great big domed, it's almost like a sunroom, but in a dome, and it's on top of the building. It's a big round one, gondola, I forget what they call them.
Like a solarium or?
Yeah, kind of, but it's a great big domed looking thing. Lots of windows because you could go up there and see, all around. My gosh, you could see the whole, Atlantic. You could see everything. Probably at the time it was built, you could probably see a lot further, right?
Probably New York back then.
Oh, yeah. And, it's a great big observatory. And I always thought it would be so neat to go up there. I found out what it was built for. All the people that were coming in 1890s, all of that going way back, they had kids and relatives that were, let's say, not right in the head.
Mm.
And that's where they took them. And they would lock them up there in that room. And there was one nurse that would just watch everybody so they could go have their holiday and their vacation, and that those kids and people would be up in that room. Isn't that the saddest thing you ever did?
Wow.
The things we did to people, but that's what your story reminds me of, because I don't look at that building the same anymore. That's just a very, very sad thing. But I encourage everybody to go out and look into the history of, where you're living and what's gone on, and because you'd be surprised what you dig up, no pun intended.
Let's get to a couple of the other stories you have here in the book. Let's talk about the Snot Hag.
I love that one.
Oh my gosh, she was hard. Oh, chills to this day. That's a story that kind of came back around to get me twice, because I found out, I learned a little something in that one. I'll give you the short version. There was if Sysco can give you a short version, I'll try. Okay, we were in a little beach house. We were in Belmar, and this, like a lot of the places built here by the shore, it was an old place that was built for probably servants and people that worked for the big hotels and stuff on the shore. There's lots of little bungalow houses like that, and it's many windows. I mean, like all around, just windows. And I forget where I was. I think I was watching cartoons in the living room or something, and I hear this big commotion anyway. And my mom is really kicking up a storm, and she's cussing, and chairs are being knocked around. What in the world? And I go running out there, and she starts, machine gunning all these things to me. Don't let it get near you. Get up on a chair. Don't touch. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I see what is either the ugliest cat or the biggest rat I've ever seen in my life. I'd never seen a possum before. And she's chasing it around the kitchen, and chairs are going, her hair's all messed up. I mean, it was a real thing. And she's really, like I said, throwing all these things at me, like, get up on a chair, get outside, don't let it, because, I mean, they have teeth, Oh, and she's trying to from me, and it's a little house. I mean, it's a shoebox kind of house. I mean, you can go walk straight line and go from the kitchen into one of the bedrooms, into another bedroom, into the living room, and out the front door. It's one of those little places. So there was a lot of commotion, and I'm trying to help her. And I think at one point I ran to open up the front door hoping it would run outside, and it took a left and went to where her bedroom was in the little bathroom there, and then there was commotion back there. Now, the next I see my mom, she comes out and she's got a shovel. Now, where the shovel came from, I couldn't tell you. She had a shovel in her room. I don't know. She had a shovel in one hand, a pillowcase in the other, and the pillowcase had a big blood stain growing on it. And, I mean, she was sad. She was overwhelmed. We don't like to hurt animals, but she was in a panic, you know.
Right.
And we were just both so solemn at that point. So she said, let's go bury it, or I said, let's go bury it, and we go out to the wood edge to bury this poor possum. We dig a hole. And I think I was overcome with the whole emotion and panic of the whole thing, and seeing my mom upset always upset me bad.
Oh, sure.
So I'm feeling really bad too. Yeah, 'cause she's a tough lady. Very rarely do I see her, get broke up like that. So we're burying it, and I'm making some kind of little cross out of sticks or something with a hair ribbon or something. I can't remember. And she just said, okay, finish up, because I said I wanted to say a prayer. I know it sounds silly, but I was a good kid. And she goes in the house, and I can see her through the kitchen screen door, leaning up against the sink, pouring a glass of wine, probably well-earned glass of Chianti. And I looked down, and I couldn't remember a prayer, but I did remember a song from Sunday school, and it had to do with animals and stuff like that. So I'm singing it. And as I'm singing this song, I'm like sitting on my knees on the dirt, and this feeling comes of just, at this point, I would call it terror. At that point in time, it just felt like a heavy thing that just comes over you, like fear, like get out, run, fight or flight, and you can't move. And I don't know what I'm supposed to be scared of. I don't see anything. I felt it. And I look up and I look around, and I don't see anything. I mean, it's real nice, just getting fall. There's leaves on the ground. And I had Native American, grandmas taught me a lot, and my mom too, about pay attention to your surroundings. You hear any sticks cracking? Do you hear anything walking? So I'm paying attention. I'm turned on now. Nothing. I don't hear anything. And I started to finish the song again. It got worse, and the hair is standing literally up on my arm and the back of my neck and just shot right up my back. And I look up, and not far from me, but still at a distance, I see what I thought was an old lady that had fallen, because she had like leaves and sticks all over her, and she had multiple layers of clothes, and they were all like a dingy color, like blacks and grays and browns, and it seemed like she had a lot of layers on, and shawls, and those knitted shawls that kind of tore up and raggy. Mm-hmm. And she had these leaves in her hair. She had this real long, stringy, black salt and pepper kind of hair, had white in it and gray. And I really thought she had fallen down. Because, when you get up, you got stuff stuck to you.
Right, right.
That's the first thing I thought. But when I locked eyes with her, the fear got worse. I mean, I wasn't feeling like I just saw somebody, walking in the woods. And she's looking at me. She's standing there staring straight at me. She's got her hands and her arms out to her sides. And she's just making a fist and then splaying her fingers out really fast. And then making a fist. What an odd thing to do. Just standing there staring at me doing this over and over again. And I'm like, whoa, And I'm looking straight at her. And I start to focus on her face because I'm trying to figure out, what is she doing? Is she trying to tell me something? Does she need help? Did she hurt her hands? These are the things that go through my head. And I get a kind of a better look at her face, and she doesn't look good. And at that time, I didn't really notice it. I looked down because I figured she doesn't look good. She's sick or something. Something's wrong. And I tried to look down to look away from her. And I looked back up, and she's closer. I was like, whoa, man. And she got so much closer. And she's kind of half behind this tree, and I still see one hand doing the same thing. Fist, and then splay open, and fist, and then splay open. She's staring right at me. And at this point, I can see most of the top half of her body. And I'm looking at her because she's not good. And then I notice she's got one long stream of green snot hanging out of her nose. And it's hanging down to her waist, and it's swinging, and it's not breaking. And I'm like, that's not right. You know what I mean? That's when it clicked in my head. That's not right. Something's wrong. And I tried not to look at her eyes. She's looking right at me. And at the same time I thought that's not right, that's when I thought about the sticks and stuff. I'm like, I didn't hear her walking, you're walking in a woodland like that, and there's 6 inches, 8 inches of leaves and sticks, and you're going to hear something. And I think that's what made me bolt. At that point, something broke, and I was able to move, and I darted straight for my mom, and I ran through that screen door, and I slammed that door, and I'm up against, like you throw your weight against, you land on your butt with your back against the door, and I'm like, taking a breath. My mom's looking at me, and she's doing this mom talk to me. Like, I know you're upset about the possum, and I know that, but no, you don't understand. And she's still doing that. I know it was very upsetting for me too. And no, there's a woman out there, and she's ugly, and there's snot, and she's gonna kill me. And I'm just saying all this stuff, And she's like, "Now, honey, I know you're upset, but there's nobody out there." And then she reaches above me and looks out the window, and I'm like, "Glass! I'm not safe at all." And I dart because I forgot the windows were up there, I go darting into the living room and I jump on the couch where there was tons of pillows and I cover myself up with the pillows and I'm still screaming, "She's gonna kill us," Whatever it was, I was screaming incoherently. And she's just walking through the house, just, oh gosh, it just gets you when you're a kid and they're not listening. You don't understand, and she's just, not the wine's not even spilling. She's just, I know, but it's going to be okay. And, sometimes we do. And I'm like, she's going to kill us all, And I'm like, she's out there, Mom, she's out there. Go look. And she's looking through all the windows. Like I said, the whole side is windows looking onto the woods. And she's looking through the windows. There's nobody out there, honey. I don't know what you're talking about, and I see her looking out the window, and I see her looking directly where I thought the lady would be. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe she's gone. Calm down. It's just your imagination. No big deal. Whew,
Mm-hmm.
And I get off the couch, and I go jump on the chair that's next to her, and I start looking around, too, like, okay, we're going to be cool here. And I look right where my mom's looking, and I'm looking there, and there she's standing. And she's just standing there looking at me with this smile, snot swinging, big smile on her face. And she knows, I know that I see her, and I got the feeling she knew that my mom couldn't. And that's when I found out that I could see things other people couldn't. And there's a snot woman living in my woods.
And you never saw her again?
I never saw her again. But the kicker to the whole story, if that isn't enough, I never saw her again. Mom was a single mom at this time, and we did a lot of moving because she was an advertiser. She did some other things, and she moved around a lot for a job. We were only there temporary. We already had boxes, loaded and ready to go. So we were there a couple more weeks, maybe month tops, and I was grateful for that. And I never went out the back door again. I only went out the front door, and I just didn't look in the woods, and I kept the windows closed. I never saw her again. When I saw her and I saw my mom looking at her, I took off. I went in the bathroom. And I stayed. She slammed the door, and I stayed in there for I don't know how long. I wouldn't come out because it was just so scary. How does I see her and she doesn't? I don't understand this. So we moved. Not long after that, my mom got extremely ill, and she passed. I mean, well within maybe a year. Somewhere around in there, 1.5 years. She got cancer and she died. And when I came back, my aunt and uncle came to get me, and I wound up living with them. And they lived in the same town, not far from where we live. And I remember finally starting to come down from the whole shock of everything and the funeral, and I'm thinking, okay, I can make it. I can go to school here. I've got a place. You're kind of talking yourself down from trauma, And I remember I had a tiny little room that looked out the back toward the woods, and I'm looking out this little window, and I'm like, gosh, this is really nice. There's a real pretty mimosa tree. It was all bloom pink, and I'm like, this is kind of cool. I can chill, And I'm looking out the window, and I look across the yard, I look over the fence, and I look through the woods. And as I'm looking through the woods, there's a bench on the corner of a house, and I'm like, no. And then I look at the house, and through the trees, it was hard to get a whole idea. That's the house we used to live in. I'm right back. And I had no idea, Seriah. I had no idea because my mom and I, anytime we went to my aunt's house, we got in a cart, and got in and went down the block and up the street. I had no idea she lived behind us like that because you couldn't get through the woods with fences and stuff. But from the second floor, I could look down and I could see. Now I'm just on the other side of the woods, and I'm back with the snot woman again. You want to talk about a trauma shock? Do you know what I'm saying? That's traumatic, man. I'm like, well, I'm not going in those woods. It's like,
the thing about that apparition is, it's very specific. You saw a lot of detail, but also it happened right after you killed an animal and buried it in the woods. It almost seems like a response to that.
It did.
Maybe the possum was her totem. I don't know,
Maybe.
her familiar, and she was like a witch or something. That's
I
strange.
really felt like we were probably a foot and a half into that woods, to the wood line. Very rarely did I ever go out there to the woods. I'd go to the edge, to play. I can remember playing Barbies and stuff out there. But the woods was just something, I didn't have any friends. There was no young kids around and weren't there that long. So that would be the first place you'd go, is the woods. But, I really felt like she was pissed about the song. I'm here singing a song about, if she was bad, I'm singing a song about Jesus and, God loves animals and stuff like that. Maybe that pissed her. I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of all of it. I don't know. I'll never know. But, man, I went all through high school living in that house. And me and my brother were out there playing Frisbee one day. And that thing overshot me, went over the fence, and he said, "Go on and get it." And I'm like, "That Frisbee gone, man. I'm not going out of the woods to get that Frisbee." But I never told anybody, because who's going to believe that? I felt her. I can honestly tell you, I felt her. There were times I felt her. I'd be out there like trying to lay in the sun or chilling or something like that, and I would just feel this feeling coming over me, and I'm out. I wouldn't even look. I never wanted to see that again. So I don't have a clue. It could have been anything, It could have been a really sick old woman, but how come my mom didn't see her?
Right.
That's the only thing I got to tell you on that one, And that's not normal. It's just not normal. And she seemed to be very angry, So I don't know.
Well, let's go on to another super creepy one, the swamp creature that you encountered when your mom was driving.
Man, that one's hard, because it's hard to explain that. And a lot of people say too, I've heard many things on that one. Like, was it a harbinger, of doom? Well, I don't know. Was it just that, the Dismal Swamp's got some creepy stuff going on? And Steve can tell you there's a lot of crazy stuff that's happened in Dismal Swamp. I think didn't you even say, Steve, that a whole Civil War?
There was a whole platoon that marched off into the swamp and never came back, and they don't know exactly what happened. So
Dismal Swamp, yeah, and that's where a lot of runaway slaves went and hid too. And I can't imagine going out there. My heart just breaks to think that they would choose that. That was better, because that was just a horrible, horrible place. Just it was dismal. The bugs and the snakes and everything else. Well, there was this long road, and it was about, I think we had to go maybe 14, 18 miles one way on this road to get to any grocery store. We were staying on this farm, again, a farm. And my mom was nervous to ride on it because it was it wasn't very wide. And it was to the point where, it's 70. So if you had like a big Cadillac coming at you, you more than likely had to pull over a little bit to let one car go by before you continued on, or else your tires going over the edge. And, the swamp came right up to the road. There was no guardrail at that time. There's no guardrails. There's no curb. There's nothing. It's road swamp,
right.
And that was it. So we had kind of a little game. And she was driving a Mustang. I believe it was a Mach 2, chocolate brown. It was a beautiful car. And the weird thing that looked really good was it had those louver back window, and you could see, it looked really cool from the outside, but it was hard to see out it, and get full view, because it's a louver back. It's almost like slats,
Yeah.
And yeah. So, and it had and that's before before we had to wear seatbelts and stuff like that. So I used to ride looking up, like leaning on the dashboard, because my job was to look for like deer shooting out, because my mom would have to stop. And that's just the way we got through the whole fear of it, because at night that was one spooky road to go down. And so I was like excited, because I thought, man, am I going to see a bear? Back then, if you saw a rattlesnake, you were supposed to run over it, because you didn't want the rattlesnakes to, to keep, you would to cut down the population. That was a big thing. Are you there? Did we lose you?
No, I'm right here.
Oh, okay. And so anyway, that was kind of a game. So I got a real good look at this thing. Now we're trucking along, and probably if my mom was doing 25, 30, maybe 30, 35, she would not go fast on this road because at any time, and that's it.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, this big, dark thing just lobbed onto the road. And it didn't run, it didn't gallop, it just kind of bloop, and it was kind of right in front of us. And I really thought it was a bear. I had never seen a bear in real life, but it had that kind of shape, like just walking, And my mom said something, I can't remember what it was, and she's trying to slow down, and then everything kind of went in slow motion. Now she's tapping the brakes to slow down, even though she wasn't going very fast. And we're getting right up on this thing. And as we get right up on it, I'm on the dashboard and I'm looking down the nose of this Mustang, so I can pretty get a good view of this thing. It kind of looked like a boar, but it wasn't completely like that. We did have hogs on the farm. I knew what a hog looked like. It had hair kind of like somewhere between, like an elephant skin, where it's kind of like you can kind of see hair, but it's not furry. It's one of those saucy kind of hairs. And it had weird feet. I can't even tell you too much about that, but I remember seeing it and going, no, that's no pig. And as we approached it, even though it was daytime, my mom had the headlights running because it's kind of over the canopy, the trees kind of made it dark. And it turned its face and head to look at us. And it was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I mean, if you could think of kind of a pig goat thing, a wrinkly face. I mean, I couldn't even tell you if it had fangs or anything like that, because the thing was, when it turned and looked at us, and I swear it looked right at me, of course, its face changed. And then it changed again. And I'm like, what? I mean, it literally changed. Like, if you could take your hand and make a fist and just go blip, 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 blip with your fingers, that's how many times it changed in that short amount of time. And it didn't roll. It just seemed to go almost like if you touched water and the water kind of ripples.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The surface, it kind of a ripple, and then bam, and then ripple, and then bam. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And then we hit it. And we went through it. You're expecting you're bracing yourself for the hit, and it doesn't come.
Right.
And my mom slams on the brakes. And that's when all the terror started, because you're looking beside you. You look in front of you, you're looking through those louver windows, you can't really quite see. Is it behind us? And my mom's doing this. I'm frozen. I'm up against the passenger side car door, just stuck in that corner. And I'm looking right at her like, she runs, I'm going to run. If she panics, I'm going to panic. Because you just look at your parent, Yeah. And she's got a hold of that steering wheel, and she's repeating this. She's saying, the water isn't moving. The water isn't moving. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? I'm a kid. I'm not putting it together. And then she's looking in the mirrors, and she's looking through the thing. She's looking back. And then all of a sudden she jams on the gas again, and like, just run. I'm like, good, we're out of here. And then she stops again. Well, what are you doing? Like, and I'm asking her, did you see that? The face changed. What was that? And I'm just saying all these things to her, and she's ignoring me completely. She's not answering anything I'm saying. She's just focused. And I'm like, what is she doing? And then she does something that the terror that went through me when she makes this movement. She reaches for the car door handle, and she opens the door, and she puts her foot out. And I'm like, oh my God, she's getting out of the car. What is she thinking? I guess she must have thought, what is it, stuck under the car?
Right.
Is she trying to get it loose? What is she doing? She's trying to get a better look. And I'm like, and at this point, I can't speak. I can't even draw breath. And I'm just, don't get out of the car, And just as if she heard me, she pulls her foot back in, and bam, she got out that gas and we were gone, man. And she took off down that highway and we got home faster than anything. And I'm just covering my head. I'm like, I didn't see what I saw. I didn't see what I saw. That was horrible. I mean, this was the ugliest thing. I've seen some ugly things on TV. I've seen some ugly, I've never seen anything that looked like that. And if she saw that too, I mean, we still got our Snot Hag in the past. I'm like, maybe she didn't see what I saw. I mean, do I say what I saw or are they going to lock me up? I mean, you don't know what's going through your head when you're a kid. I was probably 11, We get home and I hear the gravel. So I know we're home, down a long driveway, going back to the, it's a different farm. This is, like I said, in Virginia. And as soon as the car stops, I just kind of look at her like, what is she going to say? And she just looks at me. She says, stay in the car. I'm like, yes, ma'am. And she got out of that car. She walked around the back. And the whole time she's walking, right, she's taking her hand and she's kind of like rolling it down the car, like feeling for bumps or something, maybe dents. Mm-hmm. She's rolling along the whole car, all around the back, all along my side. She walks by and I'm looking at her face and man, she's just determined. She goes around the front, she reaches down and she looks underneath and she just sits back. She puts both her hands on the hood of that car and she just let loose crying. And I got out and I stood next to her and she says, we're not talking about this. I'm like, yes, ma'am. And that was it. And she was probably, I'm going to say about 3 months later, she was gone.
Wow.
So, harbinger, hallucination, weird swamp creature. I have no clue. But we hit that thing and we went right through it, man. And that's something not right about that. And I saw that face change, but I never got to talk to her about it. Did you see the face change? One time she said, that's the ugliest thing I ever saw. That's the only thing she ever said to me after that. That was the ugliest thing. I'm like, yeah, Mom, it was. So what is that? Black dog? Wasn't no dog I ever saw before. I don't know, Steve. What do you think it was, right?
Well, it makes me think of something I've said for a while, that sometimes we see things that we can't comprehend. Like it's energy, but our brain doesn't have a mask to put on it. So that when you say it's shifting constantly, it's almost like your brain's going, is this what it is? Is this what it is? Is this what it is? But it's none of those things because it's not something you've ever encountered before.
Could very well be. And here lately with my son's brain injury, I'm learning an awful lot about the brain and absolutely things like that happen. I would be very interested to see what she saw, but whatever she saw was so terrifying for her. And that was one tough cookie.
Right.
She just said it was the ugliest thing she'd ever seen and left it there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So who knows? I don't want to see it again. And how do you go through it and not hit it? And it didn't dart backwards. It didn't dart forward because there was water on both sides, and that's what she meant by the water is not moving.
Right. But again, if you're dealing with energy, it may not have had a physical form. You may have both seen a disruption of energy, tried to put a face on it, went through it, and then, of course, now there's nothing there because you went through it, and your brain goes, that was nothing. I'm not going to see anything anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's as good an explanation as any,
I've got a similar story, almost eerily similar story in one of my books. Mm-hmm. Same thing almost happened in Alabama. People were driving up to Tennessee to visit Grandma. One car is following another. The lead car hit something black in the road, swampy area, and one of the kids that was riding in the car and saw it said it looked like a guy in a sweat or a scuba suit, a wetsuit, crawling across the road.
Right.
They hit it. There was blood on the car, but they didn't see anything. They went back when they got to Grandma's house. Said there was so much blood across the grill and down the sides of the car. They went back to make sure that they hadn't killed somebody.
Right.
But there was no sign of anything dead or just off to the side of the road. They even watched the papers for a while to see if there was a report of anybody missing or somebody found a body and somebody I was talking to this story about, I think it's Adam Sane, said, what if it was some sort of extraterrestrial life that crossed time and space and went through all this to suddenly materialize in front of a car
Yeah.
on a road in Alabama, gets killed, and then it just dematerializes back to wherever it's from. How sad would that be?
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought too. I mean, I hear a lot of like Skinwalker Ranch, and I've been really trying to look into that a little bit, just reading the stories and hearing different things people saw. I mean, they're seeing like portals open up and things crawling out the portal and coming over, just walking off like it's been here 1,000 times, we don't know. We certainly don't. That's why, I had called and asked you for permission to use your quote, because I definitely wanted to mention you in the forward, and I definitely wanted to put you in there, Seriah, a little bit, and say that quote that you said about the puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
It's like we each have puzzle pieces. We don't. We have one piece to a 500,000 piece puzzle. We don't even not sure what pieces we have.
Yeah.
Because we all think this is what happened and this is what I feel it was. And now I'm going to just stay there, and I'm not going to listen to anybody else tell me what they think. Because talking to the two of you about all the things that happened to the farmhouse and about how my dad was just really violent, and, we started talking about, did the house, was there something in the house that fed off of his anger and violence, his cracks in the windshield, so to speak? Did his energy come into the house and wake that up? Was it a combination of both? There's so many different angles you can look at this, and they all very well may be true.
Right. Right. And
yeah.
you have that sort of perfect paranormal background too. You have some trauma because of your dad, and a very liminal existence as you moved a lot. And I mean, these are things that draw in the paranormal.
Yeah. Your
whole life sounds like it's been very liminal.
Yeah, and that's it. And a lot of people could look at my life and go, man, she's had it hard. And I don't look at it that way. I look at, man, I've been so lucky because I've seen so many different things. I've worked in a lot of different jobs because I wanted to see what they were about. I've looked at friends that have worked in the same place for 35 years. I'm like, I would die.
I'm the exact same way. It's like, I can't do that.
Like to do, 8 things at once. I have to do 8 things at once, and it's just the way I am. I'm creative, and I have to do a lot of things. But that was it. Sometimes we went and moved into place, and it was 3 months, 2 months.
Yeah.
I went to, I think, 5 different schools in the 3rd grade. And everybody would go, oh my God, that's awful. And I'm like, no, it was an adventure, And my mom, I know my mom kind of had that. I know that there's more in my family where people shut things down, because I know that there's more ability, especially the Native American side. I know there is. And I think the others, if they did have it, they shut it down. I'm in a house full of 5 teenage females. If you don't think that they had some energy slinging stuff around in there,
Well, yeah, and that's exactly
Yeah.
what poltergeist stuff manifests around. It may have been one of you manifesting it. It may have been something that was there pulling off of that energy.
Yep.
A little bit of
all
both.
of it. I think all of it. It was a circus town of paranormal stuff, man. I mean, stuff disappearing. I mean, look at that Thanksgiving story. Yeah, like 6, 7, 8 pies just in there one second.
Tell people the story.
All right. I was young, and it was Thanksgiving. And when you're a house full of women, everybody's got something they want to make, and it's a big deal, and we're having company. So, and it's a big farmhouse. It was really beautiful. The table was one of those great big long tables. It was really nice. And my mom was really jazzed on the whole using the linen and the good china thing. It was a big deal back then. So now we had a big farmhouse kitchen. There was actually a picnic table in the kitchen, and there's plenty of room, because we had so many people. Now, big Ben Franklin stove that we actually used to bake as a second stove. We actually used this thing like they did back in the day. Plus, we had the modern stuff, too. So all the girls are in the kitchen and they're all baking pies, and I mean from scratch. I mean the flour, the everything. The kitchen's just full of smells and flour and sugar and just, it was crazy. It was great. So they're baking all day, and they finally get all these different pies, and there was like a pecan and a peach and 2 apple and pumpkin, and it was just fabulous. And they're all on this big picnic table because it was the best place to put it for them to cool. And they baked so many that they even went next door to borrow pie pans from the farm next door because we just didn't have enough. And I'm being sent down. I'm doing all the jobs, little jobs, like I'm, polish the silver and fold the linen napkins. And I remember fussing about it because my brother and my dad were just, they were just men. And, I'm like, they're not going to want to use these napkins. And, Dad's not going to like this. And, just fooling around. And lots of commotion. So I remember the kitchen had a back door that had a screen and then a door. And then there was another door that kind of went out to where the barn was and where we parked our cars and stuff like that. And that had a screen door and a regular door. And the screen doors were closed and locked with those little latch hooks that lock from the inside because there's so much heat from all this baking, and we're just airing everything out. And some of them went upstairs to get dressed, and we were doing like the last little things. And I can remember I was folding napkins and stuff on the table. My mom was sitting there and she was doing something. And one of my sisters came in from the kitchen and sent me into the kitchen to get something that she had forgot. So I'm like, just wandering and complaining and blah, 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 blah. And I go into the kitchen and there's all these pies, right? And I loved pecans. And they made me shell these stupid pecans, and I wasn't allowed to eat any of them, and I was going to get them back. So I reached down, and I peeled off one of those pecans, and I ate it. And then I kind of pushed the pecans around, because you know what I mean, to try to make it look like it. Yeah. Then I grabbed whatever it was I was supposed to grab, and I go marching back into the dining room. It's just one room to the next, no big, long way. And I go into the dining room, and my sister goes back in to get something else, and that's when the crash, bang, and the screams happen. And all of a sudden she's screaming. There's a lot of that going on in that house. So usually I go running away from it, but we all kind of ran in there, and we go running in there and was like, what happened? There's something she had dropped on the floor. I forget whatever that was. It was broke. And she's just, look, and she's pointing. And my mom starts screaming. I'm like, all right, what's going on? Every single pie is gone. I mean, gone. You can see the grease where the pans were on every single pie is gone. And I'm like, God, don't look at me. I just ate a pecan. And I'm like, panicking. I'm like, not saying nothing. Right away, everybody comes running in. That was home. And my mom is doing like your normal stuff. Where's your brother? Well, he wasn't there. He was at his friend's house, and he was coming home late. He's not there. Check the doors. Somebody came in here and stole all those pies. Well, I remember distinctly one sister going this way and one sister going the other way, and they both unlocked the screen. So the screen doors. You see what I'm saying? There was no way in that kitchen to take the pies unless you went past us, and we were all in the dining room. So how'd the pies get out? And then they're just like yelling nonsense, like, go check the cornfield. What are the pies going to be doing in the cornfield? How'd they get there? What kind of crap is it? You know what I mean? They're just all saying all this stuff, and they're out doing it. They're out, look at the barn. What do you mean, look at the barn? My sister is sitting next to my mom. My mom's got her head, and she's just holding it. And I know when my mom's doing that, you don't mess with her, and you're just trying to figure out what's going on. Never found the pies. Never found the pie pans. There was nobody in that house that could have come in and got past us to carry those things out. And my dad didn't do it. And right then, they just, like troopers like they were, they just started figuring out how they were going to explain this to Dad. They were going to say that they burnt the pies in the oven and they had to make something else, and they just started making other things to make up for it. Now, you tell me.
It would take 3 or 4 people to carry that many pies, too. That was a one-man job.
Yeah. 6 or 7. Never found the pie. I'm like, well, do it in the cornfield. I just, you just, when you live like that, and we lived in that house, I'm going to say a good 4 years, because they were there before I was born. So, the stuff that went on in there, and who knows the stories that died with them, because
Right.
many of them are gone now, and I can't ask. I was lucky enough to get the little pieces I got, at the family reunion, because those people, they just clam up about stuff.
Right.
So I don't know, but that's crazy. That's just one of the things. And I said in the book, many things happened, but if I didn't see it, or I had nothing to collaborate with, I didn't mention it. But multiple things happened in that house. Multiple. Those are just the ones that I was there to see enough of that I could explain, what happened, not exactly what was the cause.
And I like when you were writing it, you say, "Oh man, my sister's going to be so mad." She's like, "But I've got several, so they won't know which one I'm talking about."
That's why I never used any names in the book. It just said she. And the only one I had to go to and say, but I had to go to my brother. I wrote a book, and he went, "Oh my God, about what? About what?" I said, "You're actually kind of heroic in this one, it's all paranormal, it's all cool." And he's like, "Oh, okay, good." And I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna write another one." You want to wait till you pass? Yeah. But, I'll write the Peyton Place one, and, the next version or something. But, yeah, but that's the thing. I was extremely careful of, like, I heard, the only part in the book that's like I heard was when I was talking to my brother, and he was telling me what they were finding in that.
Right.
Because he was just kind of purging at that point. Most people had passed. Didn't feel like he was doing any hurt, and he felt like he had done me a disservice by burning all that stuff. And he's like, "Dad was drunk and mad, and I wasn't going." And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it, dude. I'd have done it too. Dad could be." He had a sledgehammer. I mean, 6'7", drunk and pissed with a sledgehammer. Yeah, I'd have burned it too. Or hid it in the bushes or something. But yeah, that was the thing. I really think whatever was in there got a hold of him too. But everybody gets I don't ever understand why people say, "Well, this is a new house. We built this house. There's couldn't be haunted." That's
Right.
just such a joke. Do you know how long this land has been here? And then if you start trying to understand a little bit about hauntings and what can be and our theories on what we think it might be, if any of that is true, then ghosts can just be drawn by somebody in the home, or an accident down the street, or attached to a person, or an object, or that house was full of antiques, and that's what they did. It was all colonial antiques and things. God knows, that. But I really think quite possible that I always got the feeling that guy, that Revolutionary War guy, was hiding out there for some reason, and that's just pure feeling. It's not even really a theory. It's just a feeling I always had that he was supposed to be safe, and something happened. So if you think about it, a lot of times, if you strayed away from your platoon, or you were in battle, you got wounded, you got left behind, a lot of times the farmers would take you in and try to hide you from, and a lot of people hung for that. A lot of people lost their homes because of doing stuff like that. But I really got that it was something like that, and we'll never know.
Yeah. Well, we have time for maybe one more of these stories. I had a bunch more I want to ask you about, but let's do the guardian angel.
Okay, the one that because there's a couple of them in there. Can you give me?
Well, just do both of them.
Okay. Well, after my mom died, this is the first time I heard the voice, the very familiar voice. Now it's familiar. I was extremely angry. You go through all these things when you lose somebody. And keep in mind, I was basically an orphan at that point. My dad was gone. Everybody split up and gone. My mom died, and after the whole thing where I found out I was living with the Snot Hag again, I went through this time where I got really angry, and I was really, where just rage, And I remember at one point it just got so much, I just broke because I was being real strong, and I never cried at the funeral. I was one of those, I was just doing what I had to do, going through the motions. And at this point, it just broke. And I was honestly, I can say at this point, I was really pissed at her for dying. I know that sounds crazy, but, how could you leave me,
Right.
And then I was really angry at God. I'm like, you don't understand. I bargained with you. I told you, I was having that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on my knees and I'm just looking up and I'm just angry, and I'll never believe in you again. And I'm having that conversation. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in my right ear, I hear, who are you talking to then? What? And I mean, it was a male voice. It was calm. It was a little arrogant. And it was just the feeling that I got over. I mean, of course, you just stop and you look, I was completely alone in that house. I mean, people-wise. And I heard that voice. And I'm like, huh? But who said? And I'm up and I'm looking around. And that was, at that time, that was the first time I ever heard outside my head in my right ear. And from then on through life, I've heard that voice many times in poignant situations. Never when I think I should hear it. It's always a surprise, but it's always very calming. It's always right on time. And it usually tells me what I need to hear. And I cannot explain that. But I had multiple things after that. Things like, I'm not paying attention. I'm walking across the street. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, something picks me up, 2 hands on the back of my shoulder, bam, picked me up, lifted me off the ground, and put me back probably 3-4 feet on my butt. And turn around and nobody's there. Is that the same person? I don't know. But the odd part about it, and then the bus went by. I mean, I'd have got hit, And you look, and there's nobody around you, or people look at you like you just fell or something. They're not close enough to have done it. Certainly not strong enough.
Yeah.
And I mean, you try to decipher it, and you try to CSI it, and it's just like you can't explain it. Several things like that. And I just always felt it was the same type of person or entity, because I always got the same feeling. You'd think when something happened like that, it would really shake you up, but it always seems like it was very calm, warm feeling. And it's just odd to describe, but that's why I think it's the same person, or at least the same type of entity. So like being good, or guardian angel, or something like that. Or a past loved one, or, a really good Bigfoot. I don't know. But, but you know what I'm saying? We don't know, but all we can do is go feeling we get, the energy we feel, that maybe a smell or a sense, and that always seems to be the same. All of those things be the same when something like that happens. So I think it very well could be a guardian angel,
Could be your higher self making sure that you continue on where you're supposed to go.
It could be. And if it is, that's awesome. I must be, it's a comforting thought, because then I must be doing okay. I want to do okay. If that's my higher self, and I'm going back to that, and I'm probably about 7 foot tall with really big hands.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Aleister Crowley always called his higher self the Holy Guardian Angel. So,
it could be. Like I said, we've all got, it's this theory, and a really deep voice. Because it's always that same voice. It's really deep and very comforting. It's so odd, but it's so nice. And like I said, the funny thing about that is people usually get guardian angels wrong too. They think, well, why would my guardian angel let me slam into a tree? Because you're supposed to.
Yeah.
They're not going to stop you if something you're supposed to do, something to learn something from it. I mean, that's how I feel anyway. And they just put too much on them,
and of course the reaction to be like mad at God or mad at whatever you believe in, because something bad happened to you is a very common reaction. But
absolutely,
it's like when you stop and you think about it logically, bad things are going to happen. You can't just have a perfect life with nothing bad ever happening and never losing anyone. Unfortunately, that's part of how we grow and learn.
Exactly. If you think about this like school, I mean, how horrible a school would it be if we had all the answers and nothing bad ever happened? I had a Native American elder tell me one time we were just chilling by the powwow fire once. I learned so much from them. And he would just tell me, he's like, it's your journey. If your journey was constantly smooth and everything was going okay, you wouldn't realize all the beauty around you. You wouldn't realize, you would take it for granted. And that I got that, and it's like, you always choose the rocky road. And I said, yeah, but it doesn't seem like I have a choice. He goes, yes, you do. You just don't realize you're making those choices, and your spirit wants, it wants the conflict. It wants the challenge, because that you came back here to grow this time. You're not having it easy this time, but you're digging it. And I'm like, how cool is that? I'm like, yeah, I'm digging it. I'm cool. But that's, that's it makes sense if you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in reincarnation. Why not? I don't really disbelieve in a whole lot of things, because I know enough to know I don't know.
Yeah,
I just don't know. I'm kind of a fence rider until I see something that makes me throw both feet over and jump off of one side. It's like, yeah, I'm all right here till I learn something else that might make me change my mind. But right now, I'm cool on this side.
That's me, and just based on my own experiences, it makes it hard for me to discount somebody else's experience, because some of the stuff I tell, if somebody told me that, if I hadn't experienced it, I would think, you need to have your head looked at. But then when it happens to you and you've experienced something that just makes absolutely no sense and seems to come from another realm, then you're like, okay, yeah, things happen. It's like you can't explain everything.
Mm-hmm. It's like time warps and things like that too. It's crazy, You can't explain it. You're here 1 minute and you're there the next, or you lost time, or I don't think we know anything, Zora. I mean, I really do. I think we really, really want to understand. I think we're hardwired to figure things out and to try to understand and put things into category. This isn't the subject that you can put into categories. It doesn't fit neatly in little file cabinets, because they bleed over. And then you find something else and they completely change. Well, that was wrong. Put it over here, We're
the fish in the fishbowl,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole universe is out there, and we can only see what's in the room with us.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I'll tell you something too, the listeners might be interested in. Any communication. Now, this is assuming that I am communicating or hear people that have crossed over, if that's how you want to say it. Anybody that's ever come back to visit me and I've had the chance to ask, or in another situation, they won't tell you either. You know what I mean? It's like, what's it like? They'll tell you a little bit about what it's like, and and all that, but they're not going to give you all the answers. Maybe they don't have all the answers. Maybe they don't know themselves. Maybe you're just talking to a hologram or something else. We don't know. But if you want to try to figure that out by talking to the dead, most of the time they'll tell me they're okay. It's us they're worried about. We need to go through our stuff. Mm-hmm. And, when we get there, wherever there is, we'll know what they know. And that's it. And they're not going to give you the answers. And, like when my mom came back and I said, my mom, you got to tell me. And she took her finger. She went, you have to do it yourself.
But would you want to? Would you want to know what heaven's like? Would you want to know what to expect? It's like Monty Python said, it's every day is Christmas, and the Sound of Music plays on TV every 30 minutes. That's, if you heard that, would it change your idea of things? Or
that would be hell to me.
Yes, exactly. That's it. I am comfortable in the thought that our loved ones are okay. I'm really comfortable in the thought that my pets and stuff that are okay. And I've had people tell me that, have been in this a long time too, that it's really neat, because now you really get into a lot of dimensional, head scratching here, that if we do live many different lives, reincarnated wise, and I certainly can't explain all that, but, and we're in a soul group, just say, for argument's sake, we're in a soul group. We kind of keep coming through the same souls. Like one time you'll be the mom, one time you'll be the nosy neighbor that lives next to whatever, all to teach each other. And next time I'll come back and hit you with the axe, and you whatever it is that we're learning. But the cool thing I had a couple different people tell me this, that the animals don't always reincarnate, and that all the different animals that you've had in other lives still greet you. So that one blew my mind. I'm like, what? So like the poodle I had, from couple hundred years ago is still gonna. That just comforted me somehow. I just thought it was so cool. And I've also heard that animals reincarnate too. Like like if you had a cat, sometimes it'll come through. It's just an endless thought, and I think we tend to land on the ones that we're comfortable with. Why not?
Sure,
We do
sure.
everything else, and that's just kind of how. Right now, that's where I am. That would all be so cool. And I'm also, like I always say, we could all be in a video game, and none of this is true. So, somebody's up there pushing the buttons, and we're all just doing what we're,
It's
wired
like
to
the Matrix. This is all just an AI created and controlled illusion.
But if you don't know, doesn't make it any less real.
Nope.
No.
Apparently, I have chose the rocky road, and I'm digging it. So, I mean, that's my purpose in life. And if I can help somebody or comfort somebody along the way, because I'll tell you, I've had to deal with a lot of grief, and that's probably why I push so much in my podcast to bring people on that say, animals are okay, and the people that try to communicate and stories that way, that they knew their animal came back. I've had that happen to me, and it is comforting. And not only that, but that once they let's just say crossed, and they came back to visit, they were no longer limping, they were no longer sick,
right?
I'm so cool with that.
Yeah.
In the Seth material, if I understand what Seth was saying correctly, he posits that as like larger beings, we split off into different souls, and we also split off into the souls of animals and trees and so on and so forth. So that it's not exactly reincarnation, but it is, and that we're all a part of it. Like it's all bits, and those souls eventually evolve to the point where they split off into other souls as well.
And it's
almost
just
like having children in a sense,
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I
think
think in the book I put about the ocean, it's like you have this vast ocean, you take a bucket of water out of the ocean. Well, is it any less part of that ocean?
Right.
And then you take a cup of water out of that, and then you take a sprinkling or drop out of that. It's kind of, that makes so much sense to me, that we are all really connected in some way, and being kind to someone else is kind of being kind to yourself too. And as we get older, I don't see anything wrong with being nice. For me, chasing some little guy around the parking lot trying to give him a ride so bad, that I'm scaring the poor guy to death. But you're trying to do something. Just get in the car, let me feed you. But but what a great world that would be if everybody was like that.
True.
And I mean, and what's it gonna hurt? And I'm a hugger. I'm a big hugger. I had heard somebody tell me one time that they had reincarnation memories and things like that, and they knew through their sensitivities or whatever that when you're over there, you have to see your whole life and what you did and how it affected others. And I'm kind of cool with that. I can see that being a reason, because if it's not school, there's no big test at the end. What's the point of the school? So you kind of see how you did and what you could have done differently and how it affected other people. And he said he come back and he's hugging everybody, because when you get there, he's actually hugging himself.
Right.
That's cool.
So I have heard, and I'm trying to remember where all this comes from, people who have near-death experiences experience that. They experience not only their lives in a what seems like a second, their entire life, it flashes before them, and they feel their effect on others, but they also feel their effect that their decisions and their choices have made even on down the line a bit. And I think, so, and I'm trying to remember where this came from. It might have been from Seth, that you don't get that when you die. You can recount your life. It's not the same, though. That Seth never talked about near-death experiences. He described the death experience, and it actually matched the near-death research that happened years later, which is one of the things that initially intrigued me about Seth. But it's like sometimes people are here to do bad things, to give other people something to fight against. Like we're all playing a role.
Yeah.
So if someone's on the wrong path and they have a near-death experience, that experience of seeing like the bad you've done to people sometimes is what puts them on the right path, because maybe they weren't supposed to be the bad guy, but they've been twisted in a bad way, and now they have this experience and know how they've been making other people feel, and it moves them in the right direction.
Yeah. And, I can believe that too. And I've had, we tend to hear a lot of the near-death experience stuff that tends to be toward the good, but I've also heard many that
Negatives.
were absolutely horrible.
Yes.
And it turned their lives around. They came back out and they were just different, and it's like, that's not where I want to go, or that's not what I do. And I'm not real big on, I'm not a real big hell person, but I do believe there's some kind of a hellish thing. And I don't know if that's of our own making. Do you see what I mean? I'm not like, that kind of thing. I don't even know if I'm more of the mind that kind of everything is right here, just a little bit above us and on a different frequency kind of person.
Right. And
I'm kind of there.
We are out of time.
Oh, wow. That was
so
short. Again.
What was the name of the book?
We are all children in the wilderness of the afterlife, a guided tour through a haunted life. And that's by myself and Mr. Steve Stockton.
And the podcast?
The podcast is Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal Podcast. And it's a load of fun. We try to have good people on there. We have good discussions and listener, stories. And it's very much like yours. But I'm just not that good at it. I'm just having a good time. Don't we, Steve? We just have a blast.
Absolutely. And I've started narrating my stories. I've got a YouTube channel, 13 Past Midnight. You got to spell that out. And Sysco's narrated the story for me, Cat Ward. I've had some great guest narrators on there. I have a lot of fun with that. It's breathed new life into my stories for me, especially to hear other people do them. So having a lot of fun with that. As always, my books are on Amazon. And I'm working on some film scripts now. I wanted to give a shout out to my co-author, Zoe, who's listening in tonight. Steve Stockton may be going Hollywood. I've got some things in the works. I'm not going to say any more and jinx it, but keep an eye out.
Nice.
We're just staying busy, Seriah, and you caused all this. So see, your action has done all these ripples. And look, isn't that nice? That's just a nice thing, because you reach out, you touch so many people, and they told two friends, and they told two friends. It's
That's
great.
the way it works. And Sysco's not the only author. Mark Anthony Wyatt, another guy, he contacted me. I think he sent me an email or something, had all these stories. I'm like, man, write a book. And he did it. And now he's like, I think up to book 2 or 3 or something now. And it literally changed his whole life and outlook on everything.
Yeah. And on the podcast too, we've had an awful lot of people like that on, and every one of them that we have mentioned you, Seriah, they absolutely love you. They love your show. They love your mind. And we'd love to have you on our podcast one time. We can do this again.
Yeah, I'd like to have you as a guest and kind of pick your brain, because you've talked to all these people, want to see what your experiences are and stuff.
Tell him
also,
what I said.
I want to shout out his music show.
Oh,
if you're not listening to The Last Exit for the Lost.
But you got to tell Seriah what I told you when you said, we got to get Seriah on, and I'm writing down the list of all the people I want to invite to this show. And I told Steve, I said, and he said, we got to dig around we got to pick his brain. I said, I'm not digging around in there, man. I said, you're just so intellectual, and I love listening to you describe things. And it's always a pleasure, Seriah. And thank you so much for causing all this and starting all this, and the book wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. That's why we put you in the forward, and I just love you, man, and just thank you so much for having us on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And Where Did the Road Go would not be possible without the help of our Patreons, and especially those patrons pledging $10 or more: Allison Cook, Lindsay Marie Trebet, Nick Martin, Super Inframan, UFO Weekly News, Tim, 36 Dingo, Maria, Jennifer Campbell, Mike McGuire, American Rambler, Paul Buscini, Nate Seriah, Anthony Sullivan, Kevin, John Rutledge Foster III, Eric Citron, Ben Crow, Janet Runyon, Andy McNamara, Sasha Lorg, Matthias Sunby, Christopher Vaughn, Riker and Stark, Robert Groom, Sean Cosgrove, Jose A., Roger Gonzalez, Craig Cicernos, Kevin Schreck, A.E. Quinta, William Lovelace, Mark Brady, Chris, Isa Hot Dog a Sandwich, John Eddy, Carla Mahoney, and Chris Johnson. Thank you all so very much. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.